that they are forging a separate power base. Is that what you're doing?
Hey, look, Martha, I don't think anybody will ever accuse me of being anything other than a Donald Trump loyalist. I was the campaign manager. I was there when we turned the lights on, and I am honored to be joining the vice president's PAC so that we can continue to raise money with the explicit goal of supporting candidates who are supporting the Trump-Pence agenda through hard money contributions. That's money for candidates running for the U.S. Senate and making sure that we are retaining our majority in the U.S. House. That is the focus of the Pence PAC that I'm now part of, and that is completely with the blessing of the President of the United States.
All right. You know, in terms of all these documents that were released today, thousands of pages from Donald Trump Jr.'s transcript, this is what he said about it. The public can now see that for over 5 hours, I answered every question asked and was candid and forthright with the committee. Your thoughts on where this whole thing is going?
Well, I think Don Jr. is exactly right. And look, I've been very public. I've had the unfortunate privilege of sitting before the House and the Senate committees to provide testimony. I did it voluntarily. You sit there as long as they need you to make sure that you've answered every question to prove once again there was no collusion in any way, shape, or form. And that's what Don Jr. did, and that's what his testimony shows. He sat for 5 hours and answered every question that they asked, and then he finally got up and left, and now we see those answers in writing, and it shows exactly what he said. There was no collusion between the Trump campaign and any outside influencer.
We're going to get into this more with John Solomon in a moment, but I want to ask you a little bit about some comments that were made by Rudy Giuliani, who's now representing the president in this matter. And here's what he said about the possibility of presidential indictment. He said they can't indict. At least they acknowledge that to us after some battling. They acknowledge that to us, he says.
Well, this goes back to I believe it was a 1999 Clinton-era memo, Bill Clinton-era memo, that was written that said a sitting president of the United States cannot be indicted. And that was something that has been discussed now for almost 20 years, and that has been the rules. And from what I understand the mayor is saying is the Mueller team abides by that memo and understands it to be accurate. And there is no indictment coming from the president because there was no collusion, there was no coordination. There's nothing to indict him for other than putting America first. If that's a crime, he's going to be indicted.
Did he give, has Rudy Giuliani given you that kind of assurance, you know, sort of offline on all this? Because when he makes these statements, you know, the reports are that he's getting ahead of himself, that he shouldn't be saying there's no indictment when the obstruction of justice issue is still out there. You know, do you think that he is sort of on the same page with the president and the rest of the team when he comes out and says there will be no indictment?
I think the mayor is exactly on the president's team. It is a different tactic, which is a much more aggressive tactic as it relates to dealing with the Mueller investigation. Tomorrow marks the 1-year anniversary of Bob Mueller being named as a special counsel to investigate this. And what we've seen in that period of time is millions of dollars wasted. No collusion by the president. We know that. No collusion by the Trump campaign. And the mayor has now said if Bob Mueller wants to talk to the president, you do it through a series of questions in a very limited fashion. That's a very reasonable request, and it doesn't seem like the Mueller team has any interest in doing that.
All right, let's play this soundbite from the interview that Laura Ingraham did with Rudy Giuliani. Get a quick thought from that before we head to the break.
What is your optimal timeline for this to wrap up?
They should do it today. I mean, as soon as possible. I think that they have the facts from which they can write their report. If you're going to write a fair report, fine, write it. If you're going to write an unfair report, write it, and we will combat it. We're ready to rip it apart.
You know, Cory, the president's former attorneys said that they felt everything was going to wrap up fairly quickly, and they are no longer in the picture. And one of the comments about that was that they were not giving the president, you know, sort of the full picture of what was going on with this investigation. Do you think that Rudy Giuliani is correct, that this is wrapping up, should wrap up, and will wrap up quickly?
Well, I hope it wraps up very quickly, and because the goal here of the Mueller investigation is to write a report to Congress to show if there was any collusion or cooperation or coordination, which there wasn't. But that report's going to take some time, and what we don't want to see is the politicalization of this issue any further, because we need the Mueller team to finish their interviews, to write that report to Congress so that the American people can see very clearly that the Trump campaign, of which I was a part of for a long period of time, never coordinated with any Russians. There weren't any Russians there. There was no collusion, and that's what the American people deserve to see. So I think it's incumbent on the Mueller team to finish their investigation and to get that report to Congress.
All right. Thank you, Cory. Good to see you tonight.
Thank you.
Coming up, a new report leading to some questions for former CIA Director John Brennan.
We wanted to make sure that we handled this matter appropriately, but also delicately, because we were in the midst of a presidential campaign.
So what is that about?